AEA, a cousin of mine actually, who said, well, what you're doing is called evaluations. You really need to go to this conference. And I had never heard of AEA prior to that, but I took Matt's workshop back in 2017. So as you can see, I've been kind of marinating on this career change for quite some time. So officially transitioned now out of my academic position. I still do some part-time hourly work for the university. And now I am located in Vermont and started my LLC in January of this year. So now my work mostly focuses on evaluating programs related to public health, sustainability, food security, and community development. That's a little bit about, my journey to independent consulting. I'll let Megan go ahead.
Yeah, so Jessica and I have really had very, very sort of similar journeys in our moving from academia to consulting. Mine started, I got my PhD at Colorado State University in, when was that? 2017. And at the time I was also, and am still with a partner who also has a PhD, which meant that we were trying to work out exactly how we were going to make that work. At the time, I didn't really have any major aspirations toward academic work, but I really did enjoy the work that I was doing in environmental policy and politics. And so in 2018, I wound up accepting a position at the University of Northern Iowa, which I thought would be really the perfect fit for me, because it was going to be a foot in the truly academic world and a foot in the applied research world, which is what I was really highly interested in. So I was a faculty member. I was a tenure track faculty member in political science. And I was also assistant director of the Center for Social and Behavioral Research. And, it's interesting because Jessica talked about how she sort of marinated on it for a while. And for me, it was more of an absolute abrupt change in my career plans. It really was a matter of, I came home one day and told my partner, I hate this and I don't want to do this anymore. It was a combination of things that we're going to get into in terms of why one would want to leave academia in the first place. But at that point, I was very lucky in that I had an incredibly supportive boss at the research center who told me about AEA, who told me, we will send you to AEA. And when that happened, that was in 2019, I went and I took Matt's class in how to start up a consulting gig. And so with that, I had at least some ammunition, though I didn't really have a full plan at that point. Didn't really know exactly how it was going to play out. And then we kind of hit the lottery. My partner was offered a tenure track job in Indianapolis. So the great irony is that I wanted to desperately get out of academia and he was trying to get in. So he does have a tenure track job now in Indianapolis. We relocated. Much more difficult than one would anticipate, as Jessica mentioned, during a pandemic. But I had already set up my LLC. I had to transfer it to a new state and get that up and going. But I have officially been out of my faculty position since June of 2020. Also, as Jessica is doing, I've kept a foot in things. I'm still working on some projects that I was already involved with the research center. But in the last, I'd say probably 4 or 5 months, the consulting side has really amped up. I focus primarily on higher education, particularly STEM programs, and particularly STEM programs that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we can move ahead, Jessica.
Muted. All right, everyone. So we're going to start out just kind of talking about different motivations that were at play for us or can be at play in thinking about transitioning out of academia into a consulting position and working for yourself. So the first thing that I know was kind of at play for both Megan and myself was some of the unrealistic demands that can come with academic jobs. There's kind of an issue. I know Anne's going to be talking about this in one of our future sessions of scope creep. But when you've got scope creep in your salaried academic job, there's no added compensation when the scope is expanding. You're kind of always expected to be increasing your service activities, publishing, how many students you are advising. So kind of always adding more to your plate without necessarily having a payout for that. Work-life balance can also be, a challenge. And this is also something, everything that we talk about today in a lot of ways is personal. Obviously, academic careers can be great for some folks, including Megan's partner. So these are just kind of some of the experiences that we've had and challenges we've faced. But setting boundaries can sometimes be challenging when you've kind of got that always on kind of mentality that can be common among faculty members. Something else that can be helpful for work-life balance when you're thinking about switching to independent consulting is the option to work remotely or work from home. I know for me, that's really helped me with a lot of, balance, even getting to take the dog for a walk during lunchtime, things like that. It feels like things are a little bit more in harmony with that option. In addition, there's a lot of flexibility and independence that can come with being an independent consultant. Specifically, something that was a real motivator for me is the option to have a lot of variety in the types of projects that you work on and the types of clients that you work with. Whereas in academia, most of the time your research is focused on becoming a very specific expert in a kind of narrow topic. So that flexibility and variety that can come with consulting really appeal to me. In addition, there's a lot of independence that you have, and it's definitely important to think about whether that's something that you're going to be well suited for. How will you feel about sort of the flexibility paired with the uncertainty that comes with working for yourself? And lastly, thinking a little bit about compensation. Plenty of academic jobs do pay well, but many don't really provide compensation that's commensurate with the amount of experience and education that professors have to attain and receive. So while I did not get into consulting or start my PhD program with the idea of becoming a millionaire, there is certainly something to be said for being paid your value and feeling like you're valued in your job. All right.
And, there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about that I think really do bridge into other businesses, other jobs that are not academia, that, that some of these things are going to resonate with everyone, regardless of whether they've had any academic experience. But the challenges of leaving academia, I think, also have a very specific sort of difficulty, because academia is really it's this entire culture. And there are so many books and, professional consultants who have their own entire industry on helping people leave academia, because for some people there are ways in which it does really reflect an abusive relationship. You're constantly told that you're not good enough, you can't do anything other than what you're actually doing. And this is certainly not true everywhere, but I do have some personal experiences. I have colleagues who have had personal experiences where the idea of doing anything outside of academia is not only discouraged, but it's actually poo-pooed. It's believed to be beneath the academic life of seeking out additional compensation for your work, for seeking out variety, for doing things that are applied, coming from political science, which is very based in testing theories. Applied work didn't even count towards my tenure requirements in my previous position. So it's not always encouraged, and there are plenty of people who are happy to take your money to help you get out. And I don't blame these people whatsoever, because most of them were previously in academia and jumped into consulting in order to do many of the things that we just talked about, get the pay that they're worth and actually help people and follow some sort of passion. Doctoral programs, even if you get outside of this sort of, community and environment of academia, they don't prepare you for non-academic jobs. You are prepared to continue the cycle of academia. You are given a very specific research style. You are taught how to present yourself at academic conferences. You are taught how to network academically. And the professional development is really targeted towards getting a tenure track job in academia. Now, even before the pandemic, chances of getting a tenure track job were infinitesimally small. I mean, we're talking about, I think something like 12% of PhDs coming out each year get a tenure track job. And most of those are from Ivy League schools. So those who are coming out of the state universities are at a disadvantage, let alone if you're coming out of a smaller university. There's really, like I said, the lack of social support. Your academic network isn't set up to help you move out of academia. That is the world that they know. That is the style of working with other people that they know. And, it's, even if you have that really supportive mentor, my PhD advisor was 100% supportive if I decided to leave academia. He said, I want you to be happy. But the thing is, if you leave academia, I can't help you because I honestly do not know anything about the world outside of academia. And it's even the small things of, just learning how to have a resume as opposed to a CV, learning how to write a cover letter that's not 3 pages long. And also, just switching your entire mindset of, you've been in this world, you've been told how everything works, and just knowing that you need to pivot. You have the tools, you have the skills that you need to do program evaluation, to go out on your own and do consulting. It's just a matter of changing how you perceive those tools. So, you need to learn how to sell yourself as an evaluation specialist, as an applied practitioner, instead of as a researcher. And that's a big step for a lot of people. So, as I said, the pandemic has done zero favors for academia, but there was already a very big trend of people leaving academics for non-academic jobs. And in a lot of ways, the pandemic has really accelerated these trends. And the cultural changes we've experienced around work as a result of the pandemic are really conducive to starting an independent consulting job. Remote work is so much more widely accepted. Prior to the pandemic, there was always the wonder of, do I have to just focus on the region I am in? What sort of connections do I need to make immediately where I am? But now it doesn't really matter. The biggest hurdle is dealing with time changes and time zones and knowing what time Mountain Zone has currently, which, by the way, they're 2 hours behind us, Matt, just FYI. So, we're in a culture now that is shifting so that it's easier to put yourself out there as someone who can consult on a number of issues that, you can do from anywhere in the world. And that in itself can really help with a lot of those things that Jessica already talked about in terms of work-life balance and flexibility. And so I think the pandemic has really been the great equalizer in helping people move from the very structured life that we used to all know to this new normal. So hand it to Jessica.
Awesome. So we talked about the why, why might someone be interested in making this transition. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the how. So one thing that Megan and I have discussed has been really important for us is building your network. So the folks through academia are probably not the folks that are going to help you find, clients or meet folks or organizations that are going to be potentially those that you want to connect with when it comes to independent consulting. So building your network is really important. And some of the easiest and most fruitful ways that I have found have been through AEA and specifically through our independent consulting TIG. So easiest and lowest lying fruit, attend our weekly chats as you guys are doing right now. I feel like that has been really just immeasurably helpful for me. I think the timing with Matt starting these up last summer was fabulous for me because I wasn't really even ready to start really getting specific when it came to this transition. I was trying to move, I was trying to quit my job, and I easily could have, put starting my business out of my mind for another 6 months till I arrived in Vermont and got settled. But it was a really great impetus for me to start thinking about all these things. And it's great to come to these chats, even if you're still in that marinating stage. So it's wonderful for meeting people, it's wonderful for building skills. Megan and I are also part of a mastermind group together that they put it on through the IC TIG. So I know we've already got mastermind groups for the time being, but I'm sure that they're going to be doing, another round whenever this round concludes. So certainly keep an eye out for any emails related to mastermind groups. It's a great way for us to just get together with some peers who are in a similar place career-wise and kind of be accountability buddies for each other. In addition, it can also be a great idea to join AEA affiliate groups in your area. So there's some specific groups for different geographic areas, and it's a great way to meet and network with other consultants, in your community or state. So those are also a really great option through AEA. In addition, it is always a great idea to do informational interviews. I know Megan was really good about doing a lot of these and had some really fruitful connections that she made. So talking to people in a variety of positions, talking to folks who are independent consultants to make sure that, that feels like a good match for you. Maybe also talk to some folks who are, working at bigger organizations. Try to really hone in on what you do and don't want to be doing with your work. It's just as important to understand perhaps what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. So meeting as many folks as you can in a variety of positions can be really helpful from a learning perspective and from a networking perspective. In addition, it's really helpful to find a mentor or mentors. So really just beneficial relationships that you can have with folks who you really feel like you can look up to, who are doing the type of work that you want to be doing. We also have some mentoring groups. I know Anne runs a wonderful one that Megan and I participate in. So it's also great to find that opportunity where you can kind of talk to folks that are both peers and get some advice from folks who have been in this game a little longer than you. So mentors are really great. And then lastly, it's also important to identify multiple sources of support. And when I say this, I'm actually talking, outside of your professional network. While building a professional network is super important, it's also really important to identify the people in your life who are going to be supportive of your new career choices and who are really going to be cheerleaders for you. So I have some family members who think I'm a little, crazy jumping off the academic train. And I have some family members who think it's really cool. And ultimately that affects who I talk to about work. And it's good to be conscious about, who you're sharing with and make sure that you're really talking a lot with the people who build you up, both professionally and personally.
So as I said, academia really, it gives you a toolbox. You learn the research skills, but what has to happen is that shift in mindset. And you have to learn how to hone those skills for really a new audience. You're not writing the dry academic papers that you had been. You're having to captivate your audiences and give them really important information. So, the things that obviously are big right now, data viz, and even just basic graphic design. High points to Jessica today. She did our PowerPoints. Notice what lovely graphic design it is. And she's been able to do that because she's gone out and used the resources that are out there, and we'll talk about a few, to really help herself get to the point where she's able to, present lovely PowerPoints, which I'm still struggling with, which is why she was nice enough to put this together for us today. You have to learn a different sort of facilitation, because you're no longer working with other researchers necessarily. You're working with lay people. So, when you're talking to clients, when you're talking to coalition members, when you're going out into the community, you need to reorient how you're discussing your topic. You are an expert, but you need to separate yourself from the academic jargon to, plain language that non-experts can understand. And that's from just basic conversations to how you conduct interviews and how you run focus groups. As I said, the report writing, this has been the biggest transition for me. My last report that I wrote for the Academic Research Center was an evaluation report that was 60 pages long. No one is going to read 60 pages of information. I believe it's the 1-3-30 principle that is very popular right now, to have, a one pager that gets at the basic points, 3 pages that gives you a little more information, and then 30 pages with appendices that gives you all of the details. You need to understand who you're writing for and what information needs to get across. And then this is the one that I think really scares people. And I'll be honest, rightfully so, the entrepreneurial skills, the business side of things, learning how to manage yourself as a business. I just paid my quarterly taxes yesterday, not by 4/15, which is what the deadline was. I paid it yesterday because I was getting conflicting information from various sources on whether or not I needed to actually do it. I'm going to get a small fee from the IRS. That's fine. But now I know I have to pay my quarterly estimated taxes. You have to pay attention to accounting. You have to market yourself. This is no longer the type of thing where you can just sit and wait for the work to come to you. Whether that's marketing out broadly, whether that's marketing to your professional network. Jessica and I both have had success now with subcontracts. It's something that you have to learn, and then you can learn on the fly, and that's okay. And, as Ann Price just said in the chat, it's okay to learn and to make mistakes. And one thing that I've learned when it comes to these skills is you're really not going to make a mistake that is too big to fix. You will figure it out. You may have some bumps along the way. You may have to pay some extra fees to the IRS along the way, but everything ultimately is fixable.
Indeed. So we also wanted to just share a couple of resources that we found helpful. We're going to skip through these pretty quickly because we'll make the PowerPoint available and folks can come back and check them out on the YouTube video. But I think one thing I really want to emphasize is how much is available to you online, and especially how much is available to you for free. So these are some folks here who I like to follow, who really provide some awesome online resources. And I am especially a really big fan of just perusing their blogs, especially if you're looking for advice on how to do something particular, how to make a specific data visualization. I think the blogs are really great for free content that is really, really specific and instructional. So definitely check out their websites. They do also have paid courses, some paid and some free online resources. I know Megan mentioned in one of our last chats how she has signed up for a paid course, and it's a great way to make sure that you really stay on top of that professional development. Because sometimes it can be a little bit hard to carve out time for, reading through these things. So there's a lot of different options when it comes to online resources.
There are also, some podcasts that are really great. Want to definitely highlight Ann Price's new podcast, Community Possibilities. Just FYI, this is not a paid advertisement. This is just how much we appreciate Ann and the work that she does. She has a fairly new podcast. Adventures in Evaluation is not putting out new podcasts anymore, but they do have a very large archive of previous podcasts that you can find as well.
And I should say too, if anybody has additional resources that they want to share with the group, by all means, throw them in the chat, and we'll be making the slides available afterwards as well.
And there are so many online communities. You know, one of the things that I think we'll talk about here in a little bit that I know I ran into is that you no longer have the resources of your university, which means you don't have any, you know, travel funds or conference funds to send you to professional development. But so many of these resources have free options or minimally priced options. You know, one of my favorites here that I want to draw attention to is The Professor is In. It's Karen Kelsky. She is an archaeologist by training, but she now works as a coach, and she's willing to help people try to get academic jobs. She's sat on the side of hiring people for academic jobs, but she's also a big proponent for those who want to leave academia. So that one is one that's near and dear to me. She has a free blog and free resources. Same with the Versatile PhD, Beyond the Professoriate, Free the PhD, From PhD to Life. There are so many of these out there. And it's really just a matter of finding one that speaks to you.
Absolutely. And it's nice as well that they have, you know, some online communities too, where you can kind of get together with other folks who are going through similar processes. All right, so now moving to our last step here. So you've decided you want to make this transition and become an independent consultant. What do you need to do to put this plan into action? So I am definitely someone who is trained in systems thinking. So context and situational awareness is something that is definitely an important theme for me, you know, in my work and in my life. So something that I think is really important to think through is kind of evaluating your safety net, your responsibilities, you know, your needs, and your specific situation and the context that you're kind of making this transition in. So thinking about what kind of supports or resources do you have access to? You know, for instance, are you part of a 2-income household? Do you have any savings that you can rely on as you get your business started? Do you have a side hustle that can help supplement your income? I should say, to be fully transparent, that both Megan and I are members of dual income households. We don't have children, so we were, you know, definitely positioned in a way that it was a little bit easier to take this risk. And I don't say that to mean that, you know, you can't make these changes in those situations, but acknowledging the context that we were in that you know, made some things a little bit more feasible for us. Also, thinking about your responsibilities. I know Ann Price has mentioned in previous calls that when she got started, she was thinking through, you know, what's the bare minimum? How much money do I, you know, absolutely need to make every month? And she talked about needing to cover her student loans. And that really turned on a light bulb for me. Thinking about the fact that your bar for yourself when you get started out does not need to be your long-term goal, you know, in terms of number of clients, in terms of the number of hours that you're working or the money that you're earning. You know, really thinking about where can I start off where I would feel, you know, safe and comfortable first before going all the way down the road to, you know, where do I need to be in 5 years? So that's something that's helpful to think about, you know, what's really the bare minimum for me? What can I make work, and what supports do I have to kind of help me in this process? And then lastly, doing anything you can to set yourself up for a smooth transition. So if you do have any, you know, side hustle or alternate sources of income, you know, that's definitely helpful if it's feasible for you. Megan and I, as we've mentioned, are both still doing some hourly or independent contractor work for our old academic jobs. So that's one thing that's allowed us to have a little bit of a safety net. But obviously that's not going to be feasible for everybody. So alternatively, trying to get your consulting started on the side while you are still in your full-time job is a great way to approach things, where you can kind of start to build your network, get a couple of clients to make that transition a little bit smoother for you.
as I said earlier, I think the pandemic has sort of been the equalizer in knowing how to, get up and going in independent consulting. But ultimately, know thyself. You need to know how you're going to work best. What is your work style? Do you need external cues that you get that would come normally from working in an office situation or in an academic building where you have colleagues dropping in from time to time? Are you deadline driven? Are you task driven? Can you work at home? This has been sort of a forced transition for many people, but is that working? Can you still do that? Now that we're slowly starting to take baby steps out of the pandemic, what do you need to do to make sure that you are most productive? Do you need to get a co-working spot? Do you need to, find some other alternative? And because, you need to think about this in terms of not only, okay, I need this in order to be productive, but also in terms of, what is that going to cost you? Whether that's commute time, whether that is the financial aspect of renting out space, because again, you no longer have the university as your backup. They're not there giving you many of the things that you had previously, like office space, like software. Sometimes you're going to need to find more cost-effective ways of doing what you've been doing. And so, you need to know how best you work, and you just need to find what works. There may be some trial and error, but ultimately, once you have started that network, that's another way to have, other people who can help you find these different ways to make you the most successful. Even if it's things like offering those external cues, like texting you, hey, are you sitting at your desk right now? Or I actually read, I think it was a New York Times article that people are doing faux commutes now, whether they sort of do, a walk first thing in the morning, and then that means it's time to sit at the desk and I'm at work now. Or some people actually drive to their old workplace and then back home to cue themselves of, okay, it's work time now. So, try things like that, figure out what works, and know how to best set yourself up for success.
Exactly. And then lastly, we wanted to talk about a couple of kind of nitty-gritty steps that go along with getting set up. So first you get your space set up, you kind of get a good understanding of how you're going to work best and what style you're going to have. But in addition, there is some of that entrepreneurial tasks that you're going to also want to think about when you're starting your own consulting business. So one thing that is an important question is determining your business structure. So you can talk to a professional like a CPA to help you make this decision. You can also confer with other consultants like folks on this group to see what approach they took. I have a question next to get professional assistance because it's absolutely not required. If you want to, you can kind of do what I did and trust the fact that you're someone who knows how to do research on the internet and evaluate sources and come to the best conclusion. So I figured out my business structure, registered my LLC, got my own health insurance, and did my own website. I'm sure if I paid a professional, it would be even flashier, but it worked for me just to kind of figure those things out on my own. But it's also, something where you really want to ask yourself where your time and money is going to be best spent, because you absolutely can get a lot of benefits from working with professionals on some of those issues like accounting or insurance or website design. And some folks do also speak with lawyers about kind of their contracts and things like that. So all of that is optional, but available. And in addition, so also wanted to talk a little bit about establishing an online presence. I think this can really be something that's done in steps and little bites. I would say at a minimum, updating your personal LinkedIn profile with your new position, even if you haven't established your company yet, updating that you're an independent evaluation consultant and kind of letting folks in your network know what you're up to now is always a great idea. You can also create a LinkedIn page for your business if you do have your business started up. So that's a little bit easier than creating a whole website. And then you can also move on to creating a website for yourself or your company, becoming active on Twitter. I know folks who are active on Instagram, but give some thought to where you feel like your proficiencies lie. I'm not super active on social media, so I'm not super active on Twitter, but I did spend the time to work on my company website. So kind of thinking about where your skill set and where your interests are, and just slowly increasing your online presence over time is a great idea. And one thing I did also want to mention is once you do decide on a name for your business, it's always a great idea to buy the website domain name, the web address that you'd like right away. You don't have to make your website right away, but sometimes some shady folks will look up newly formed LLCs and buy up their website names so that they can resell them to you at a higher cost. So website domain names should be really inexpensive. I think I paid like $12 for mine for the whole year. So it's always a great idea to buy that web address as soon as you have named your business, even if you're not quite ready to make the leap into creating your website yet. And then lastly, we just wanted to have a reminder here to keep things organized. So track everything, track your expenses, track how you spend your time. That's really important for helping you figure out, how long different tasks take, and, how you should be estimating your time for contracts. Build your contact list as you, build your professional network. Find an organized way to keep that contact list, whether it's using Access or a spreadsheet, but do your best to kind of keep all that information tracked and organized. And then the last thing that we wanted to remind everyone about, can give a plug for the YouTube video for Matt's great talk last week. Once you have all your expenses figured out, once you've bought your software, once you have your health insurance, don't forget to calculate your rates methodically based on your expenses and the projected income that you'd like to see. So Matt has a great talk and worksheet from last week about calculating your rates, but I think that's kind of the culminating step once you've got all of your finances figured out and all of your expenses figured out. So again, this list is probably not exhaustive in any way, but these were just some tips on things that we've had to think about as we have gone through this process and this transition. So hopefully this has been helpful for everybody, and we are excited to have a good conversation with you all about this or about any questions you may have. And I think we've got a couple in the chat already. So